you're a graphic designer, an entrepreneur, or just someone doing it for fun, there's a few things that are important to consider before you jump in and start designing. Hey, I'm Tamara, and in this video I'm going to show you 5 things that you need to know before designing your logo. Alright, number 1 is know your target market. So it's important to do a bit of research before you jump in and start designing your logo. You'll want to research things like who your target market is, what their age group is, what are their interests, what are their hobbies. It's also good to dive in a bit into what brands they currently follow. Perhaps there's certain typefaces that you're seeing over and over within those brands, specific color palettes. So these can all be clues on guiding you into designing something that you know your target market is going to be attracted to. In addition, it's important to consider if you have an older demographic as your target market, you'll want to make sure you use a lot of high contrast in your designs, as well as pick typefaces that are easily legible. One thing I love to do is I'll usually make a brand board in Pinterest, and I'll put together a bunch of images, fonts, illustrations, logos that all have the vibe and aesthetic that I know my target market is going to like. And then that way when I'm designing, I can constantly refer back to this Pinterest board for inspiration. So number 2, make sure that your logo is unique and memorable. It's really easy to just want to choose a typeface, quickly type out your name, and call it a day. But these kind of logos are a dime a dozen, and there's nothing about them that makes you want to stop and think, or stop and take a second to digest it. And that second, that millisecond that someone takes just to say, oh, is all it takes for your brand to be imprinted in their head. So for example, say if you're designing a logo for a coffee shop, it's really easy to be like, okay, I'm gonna make a coffee cup in the coffee logo. And this isn't going to be memorable for people. It's very expected and there's nothing super unique about it. It's one of the reasons why the Starbucks logo is so successful is it's a mermaid. It's really different, and for this reason it sticks out in people's heads and creates a really strong brand. So I'm not saying to use a pirate in a bakery logo, but don't rule it out anyway. For the most part, you'll also want to try to keep your design fairly simple. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking the more you add to your design, the better it's going to be, but it's actually the opposite. The simpler and cleaner and crisper your design is, the more timeless it will be and the more professional it's going to look. That being said, there might be some instances where a busy logo can look good, especially in styles like illustrative logos and badges. If you find that your design is starting to look busy, start taking away little pieces of it until you get down to the core idea of the design. Alright, number 3, make sure your design is legible at all sizes. So there's nothing worse than trying to read a really tiny logo and you have no idea what it says. So when you're designing your logo, make sure you view it in like a super teeny tiny size, something that might be on the corner of the front of a business card, as well as blow it up super big. So the reason for this is you're going to be using this logo in a lot of different places, so you want to make sure that it's going to work for you in all of the different places that you want it. So right now, name logos are pretty trendy, especially if you're a photographer. You may potentially want to use your name as your logo. And a lot of people are leaning towards script fonts to do that because it looks like a signature. But one thing to keep in mind is script fonts can be really hard to read at small sizes, especially for people that wear reading glasses. So when making your logo, ensure that it is legible at all sizes. View it super, super tiny, like something you'd see on the corner of a business card. Make sure you can easily read it. One thing you can also do is ask a few friends. Try asking friends in different age groups, ones that wear glasses, ones that don't. Show them your logo printed out super tiny and ask them if it's easy to read. Number 4, make sure that you have rights to use the typeface that you've chosen. There are a few different resources for typefaces. You can either go on sites like Creative Market, where you can purchase a really beautifully made professional typeface. I would recommend that. There's a lot of interesting, unique fonts on there, created by super talented typeface designers. One of my favorite designers is Jen Wagner, and she has some brilliant typefaces on her page. I'd suggest you to check them out. But then there's also sites where you can download typefaces for free. But the thing with that is sometimes you'll think they're free, but then if you go in and actually read the licensing information, you'll see that they're free for personal use and not for commercial. So if your logo is going to be something used for a business, you're going to need a special type of license for that. So for example, on a site like dafont.com, you're going to want to select in filters 100% free and search that way if you want to make sure that it's okay for commercial use. And then also I'd recommend reading the README file that typically comes with fonts as well, just to double check that everything you want to use it for is allowed. Okay, and number 5, make sure that you have or are expecting to have all of the different logo files that you're going to need for all the different instances moving forward. There are a couple different files you'll definitely need, and those are vector and raster files. Vector logo files are files, they're typically going to come in an EPS or a PDF format, and those are logo files you can blow up to the size of a house and it'll never look blurry. They use a sequence of mathematical formulations to create the design, so it doesn't matter how big it is, it's still going to look crisp. So these vector files are things that you're going to use typically for print work. So if you're getting brochures printed, t-shirts, signage, things like that, you'll typically send them a PDF file. So on the other hand, you're also going to have raster files for your logo as well. So these ones will be JPEGs, PNGs, things like that. PNG files are really good because typically they have transparent backgrounds. So that means if you want to put your logo on top of an image or something like that, it's not going to have a background color behind it and it'll look really crisp and clean on top of the image. Formats such as JPEG and PNG are going to be used more for web purposes. So your email signature, the logo on your website, or putting a watermark on top of images. In addition to all these different file formats, you'll also want logo files where they are single color as well. So you'll hopefully get black versions and white versions of your logo design. Sometimes if you have a really long horizontal logo, you'll want to make a stacked version that can fit in a smaller amount of horizontal space. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you learned something new and feel more confident when you're ready to dive into designing your logo. For more design tips and tricks, subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram at Galaxy Bomb Studio.